water does not move, it breathes. In this place, the boundary between the living and the inanimate disappears so completely that scientists themselves must stop, look again, and admit they do not know where the river ends and where the world begins. There is a place at the eastern edge of Europe where the continent's greatest river stops running and transforms into something that has no adequate name in any language. It is not a lake. It is not a sea. It is not a forest. It is all of these at once, pulsing like an ancient heart, alive for thousands of years, ignored by empires, survivor of ice ages, guardian of creatures that existed before any human civilization had learned to write. What you are about to witness challenges everything you believe you know about European nature. The Danube Delta stretches across Romania and Ukraine, where the Danube River, after traveling more than 2,800 kilometers from the German Black Forest, splits into three main branches before emptying into the Black Sea. The protected area covers approximately 5,150 square kilometers, making it the second largest delta in Europe and one of the best preserved wetlands on the planet. The city of Tulcea in Romania is the gateway to this aquatic world and receives visitors from around the globe who arrive by boat, canoe, and on foot to witness an incomparable natural spectacle. The local economy is sustained by artisanal fishing, ecotourism, and caviar production, especially linked to the sturgeon, a species that has inhabited these waters since the age of the dinosaurs. Tourism in the Delta grows year after year, drawing visitors by the more than 300 species of birds, the canals blanketed in water lilies, and the unique possibility of crossing a landscape that seems to have escaped time itself. Recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site and Biosphere Reserve, this territory is treated as one of the last wild jewels of Europe, a place where nature still makes the rules. Before dawn, when the sky still carries the color of dark iron, something emerges from the black waters of the canal. An immense, ancient form, covered in bony plates, like the armor of a forgotten warrior, glides in absolute silence between the reeds that brush the surface like fingers. The Russian sturgeon, Acipenser gueldenstyatii, a creature that existed when dinosaurs still ruled the Earth, moves its nearly 2 meters of length with a precision that seems calculated by millions of years of pure evolution. It does not have scales like other fish. It has rows of bony shields called dermal scutes, remnants of a body architecture that evolution judged so perfect it never modified it again. No natural predator can easily pierce them. No current can redirect its course. It ascends the river guided by senses that humans barely understand. detecting imperceptible electric fields, reading the scent of the water with a precision that surpasses any instrument created by modern science. And at this exact moment, at the banks of the Danube, while the mist has not yet decided whether to stay or leave, this primordial being executes the same ritual it has executed for more than 200 million years. What happens next will forever change the way you see survival. The Danube Delta appears calm. That is its greatest lie. Beneath the floating carpets of white and yellow water lilies, beneath the canals where boats glide in silence, exists a web of biological interactions so complex that ecologists still debate whether they have managed to map even half of it. The western marsh harrier, Circus aeruginosus, soars over the reed beds with that characteristic V-shape that identifies it among all raptors. And at the same moment its shadow slides across the water, the grass snake, Natrix natrix, has already felt the vibration in the air and dived before the raptor's eyes could even focus on it. Every creature here seems to know something the others have not yet discovered. Scientists arriving at the Delta for the first time often describe the sensation of being watched, an impression difficult to ignore when you understand that there are literally thousands of camouflaged pairs of eyes behind every bank of reeds. What most people do not know is that this delta is not merely a migration destination. It is a living laboratory where evolution is still happening in real time, right before the eyes of anyone who knows how to look. There is a species in this delta that most European nature guides simply ignore, and that oversight is a scientific error of considerable proportions. The black-necked grebe, Podiceps nigricollis, builds floating nests, structures of bound vegetation that rise and fall with the delta's tide like living platforms. But what few observers notice is what happens beneath the surface when it dives. Its feathers have a microscopic structure that traps pockets of air with an efficiency that aeronautical engineers study as a model for new insulating materials. It can alter its own buoyancy by expelling part of that air, sinking gradually like a miniature submarine to reach depths where other diving birds cannot go. Meanwhile, in the dense reeds lining the narrowest canals, the dice snake, Natrix tessellata, unlike its grass snake cousin, has specialized almost exclusively in hunting fish, swimming with a lateral undulation so efficient that in shallow water it can be faster than the very fish it pursues. Two predators, two environments, two methods, coexisting less than 10 feet from each other without ever competing for the same resource. The ancient Greeks called this place Istros, the mouth of the great river that marked the boundary of the civilized world. The Romans built fortresses along its banks and sent naturalists to catalog creatures they had never seen before. But it was only in the 19th century that the first modern scientists arrived with nets, notebooks, and the genuine astonishment of those who realize they are standing before something without equal. The red deer, Cervus elephas, inhabiting the forested islands within the delta, confused the first zoologists. It was clearly the same species as the continental European deer, but its behavior showed aquatic adaptations that no textbook of the era described. They swim between islands. They cross branches of the river with their antlers raised like masts of primitive vessels. The 19th century naturalists recorded this with disbelief. The wild boar, Sus scrofa, was equally baffling. Entire populations living on flooded islands, developing feeding routes that depended on the delta's flood cycles in ways that have still not been completely documented today. What these first explorers could not imagine was that they were documenting not exceptions, but the rule of an ecosystem that rewrites definitions. When spring warms the delta and the waters rise, a race begins that has no spectators, only participants. The black kite, Milvus migrans, with its nearly 5 feet of wingspan and that unmistakable forked tail, dominates the airspace above the canals during the floods, but faces unexpected competition. The European bee-eater, Merops apiaster, its colors looking as though painted by someone incapable of choosing between turquoise, chestnut, and yellow, dives in nearly vertical straight lines to capture bees and wasps mid-flight, and in this process creates air disturbances that force the kite to constantly recalculate its hunting trajectories. Below, on the sandy banks exposed along the river's margins, the stone curlew, Berhinus adicnemus, plays dead with a theatrical perfection that defies any predator. Its eggs, laid directly on the ground without any nest, are so perfectly camouflaged that scientists equipped with search devices lose them at less than 3 feet away. But the true conflict that defines the delta's fate does not happen between predator and prey. It happens between the weight of a civilization that grew up around this water and the survival of a world that existed long before it. The pine marten, Martes martes, should not be here. This agile carnivore, associated with the highland forests of Central Europe, was found in stable populations within the forested islands of the delta, and biologists took years to understand how. The answer lies in the particular structure of the Danube's alluvial forests, willows and poplars growing so rapidly that they create dense canopies even on islands less than 6 feet above water level, providing the marten with both shelter and vertical movement routes that mimic the mountain forests from which its species originated. But the most extraordinary adaptation in the delta belongs to the Russian sturgeon. Its lateral line, The sensory system running along the entire length of its body detects pressure variations in the water with a sensitivity equivalent to modern hydrophones. It senses the difference between river water and seawater from miles away, orienting itself by chemical gradients that compose an invisible map so precise that it returns, generation after generation, to the exact sandbank where it was born. Science took decades to believe this. The sturgeon has known it for 200 million years. The Danube Delta processes more water than all the rivers of the Iberian Peninsula combined. That is not merely an impressive number. It is the reason this ecosystem functions as a natural filter for the Black Sea, retaining sediments, nutrients, and pollutants across an extent that no human technology has managed to replicate in a laboratory. The European bee-eater, Merops apiaster, excavates tunnels up to 5 feet long in sandy banks to build its nest. Underground engineering executed with its bill so precisely that each chamber maintains a constant temperature, regardless of the heat or cold outside. The western marsh harrier, Circus aeruginosus, builds nests directly over water. Floating reed platforms that shift slightly with the delta's oscillations, and the chicks learn balance before they even learn to fly. The black-necked grebe, Podiceps nigricollis, can remain submerged for more than 40 seconds in a single dive and make over 50 consecutive dives without any visible recovery pause. And the dice snake, Natrix tessellata, when captured, releases a secretion of such intense and unpleasant odor that predators, after their first experience, avoid any snake with a similar pattern. A form of chemical memory that functions as a behavioral vaccine throughout the food chain. There is an anomaly in the migratory behavior of the delta's birds that ornithologists have been documenting for decades without being able to fully explain. Certain bird populations that should migrate to Africa in autumn remain in the delta during winters that by all climatic calculations should be lethal to them, and not only survive, but arrive at spring in superior physical condition to individuals that completed the full migration. The energy models simply do not add up. The delta is providing something during winter that scientists have not yet identified: a heat source, a hidden food availability, or some microclimatic interaction created by the water mass itself that does not appear on conventional thermal maps. Equally unexplained is the behavior of the Russian sturgeon, Acipenser gueldenstayedti, during years of severe drought. Entire populations appear to coordinate movements almost simultaneously, shifting from one branch of the river within hours. A synchronization that would imply communication between individuals separated by miles of opaque water. No known mechanism explains this coordination. The most recent hypothesis involves extremely low-frequency electric fields generated by the riverbed itself, but it remains a hypothesis. What happens in the Danube Delta does not stay in the Danube Delta. The birds that nest or feed here carry seeds, parasites, nutrients, and genetic information to more than 40 different countries along their migratory routes. The stone curlew, Berhinus edicnemus, that spends the summer here, winters in sub-Saharan Africa, connecting two ecosystems that ecology textbooks rarely place in the same sentence. The red deer, Cervus elephas, on the delta's forested islands, is genetically distinct from continental populations. And this isolation produced by the river's branches has created a reservoir of genetic diversity that may be critical for the species' survival in the face of ongoing climate change. The sediments filtered by the delta regulate the coastal salinity of the Black Sea across an extent that affects the fisheries of countries such as Bulgaria, Turkey, and Georgia. And the Russian sturgeon, Akapenzer gueldensteiti itself, a critically endangered species whose population collapsed by more than 90% over the last century, represents not only a biological tragedy, but a rupture in a nutrient transfer cycle between the deep river and the sea that functioned without interruption since before the last ice age. Every piece that falls from this system brings down others that no one had anticipated. Do you remember the sturgeon that emerged before dawn in the first block of this documentary? It came back. That same animal, identifiable by the unique markings of its dermal scutes, like fingerprints of an ancient world, was photographed in this same canal for the third time in 12 years. It is at least 30 years old. It may be 50, perhaps more. And it carries within its body, in its chemical memory, in its extraordinary sensory system, a map of the Danube that no human instrument has yet managed to replicate. While governments debate regulations, while illegal fishermen still cast prohibited nets on moonless nights, while the delta's banks continue to be pressured by industrial agriculture, this primordial being continues doing what it has always done: ascending, searching, returning. The Danube Delta is not merely a place on a map. It is living proof that nature, when not destroyed, finds ways to persist that exceed our capacity for comprehension. The question the sturgeon asks us, silently, with 200 million years of authority, is simple. How long will we keep pretending this world exists for us, when it is we who exist because of it? If this documentary awakened something in you that goes beyond curiosity, if you felt for a moment that you were truly there, among the reeds, watching the sturgeon depart into the deep waters of the Danube, then it fulfilled its purpose. This channel exists to take you to the places maps do not show, to the stories textbooks ignore, to the creatures that carry the memory of this planet within their bodies. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next documentaries. Each one reveals a different secret of this extraordinary planet. Leave a comment below. Which moment surprised you the most? And if this content reached you in a way that was worth your time, your like is what keeps this journey alive. The next destination is already being prepared, and it will surpass everything you have seen so far.